Ah! Ah! What's up, guys? Travis here with Lucky Tackle Box. Was that a little bit annoying? It was supposed to be, because today we're going to talk about annoying these summertime bass into biting. We're going to be using Sebile's Vibe Machine to really cause a lot of noise in these areas, in these shade pockets and underneath the docks and stuff where these bass are really lethargic. They're hunkered down in that warm summertime afternoon heat, and we're really just going to make a lot of commotion, a lot of noise, and we're going to trigger these reaction, these grumpy strikes out of these fish. You're going to be amazed with the results we can get. So let's break down this technique, starting with rigging. When talking about the rigging, I first want to talk about the lure itself. With all lipless crankbaits, you're gonna have that nice little shimmy on the retrieve, and you're also gonna have this little rattle chamber, which makes this noise that gets these strikes. But with the Vibe Machine itself, it actually has this external weight on the belly, which makes this bait run true, but also when it deflects, it comes back to running the way it's supposed to really quickly. Now today, this is extremely important because we're gonna be hopping this bait off the bottom, and we wanna know that this bait is doing exactly what we think it is when it's down there, which is when we hop it up, it has a nice little shimmy up, but also on the fall, it has that soft shimmy down, and we can control this bait, and we'll really be effective in really getting these fish to get annoyed and hit this bait. Okay, now with the gear, I spool up with about a 12 to 15 pound mono or fluorocarbon. I tend to go with a Seaguar fluorocarbon more because I get the sensitivity, because you really want to feel that bait vibrate. That's going to be a key element when trying to get this bait working correctly. Then I spool up with a with a medium to fast gear ratio, like a 6.3 or 7.3 to 1. And lastly, I pair that up with a Castaway 7-foot medium action cranking rod. Obviously I want that parabolic bend when I'm fighting the fish when we've got these trouble hooks. So when they fight, that rod's really gonna absorb it, and they're not gonna be able to get the leverage to get rid of these trouble hooks as easy. But also, I want that nice limber tip, okay? When I'm popping this bait, you're gonna see later in Retrieval, I wanna really hop this bait, and with a nice soft tip, the bait's gonna jump more vertically up and down. And if I have too much of a stiff rod, when I try to hop it, I'm actually gonna start pulling this bait more towards me, and that's gonna be out of the strike zone. There we go. Dude, hey. When it hits the bottom, look at, they're choking it. Okay, so next let's talk about the fun part, and that is the retrieval. When we cast this bait to the target, which we're gonna talk about where to throw this thing in the next section, we wanna let the bait sink all the way to the bottom, which a lot of people don't realize. You don't always have to be moving this bait. So we let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then with a little bit of slack in the line, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the back of my rod. So the butt of that rod, I pop it, and that bait's gonna pop straight up. Because there's a little slack in the line, it's gonna fall back down in the same relative area. If I have tight line when I do that, it's gonna pop that bait back towards me, and that's gonna get it away from the strike zone. The idea with this technique is we're trying to aggravate those bass. We're trying to really piss them off. So we've gotta keep this bait rattling and hopping and making erratic motions right in that strike zone until they bite it. So every time we pop it, then we watch our line as it falls back down. Once it hits the bottom, I'll usually leave it there for at least a second. Sometimes I'll leave it there for about 3 seconds. And what you're waiting for is a little hop in your line. If you see that line go pop, that's because that bass just inhaled it. If you don't see that pop, then you hop it again. But as you're following that bait back down, as you know it's sinking, you should be making sure you're watching for that little hop, because sometimes they'll just grab it and then spit it back out because they're not really always eating it. Sometimes they're just pissed, and so they're nipping at it just to say, get away from me. And that's the whole point of this. These bass aren't really looking to feed a lot of the times during the heat of the day in the summertime. So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to piss them off. And big bass, they're used to being the big bully. And if something's pissing them off, they're gonna go over and they're gonna tell that thing to beat it. And that's what we're looking for. So you've gotta be watching that line, because sometimes those strikes will just be a quick pow, and you've gotta be ready to set that hook and get that big fish. Lastly is location. Just like humans, bass don't like to be really hot. And when the temperatures are 100+ degrees and those water temps get up to the mid to high 80s, these bass, they want to find shade. They want to find cooler temperatures. And during the middle of the day, they're not really active. Summertime is really more about that early morning bite, that evening bite. But that doesn't mean you can't still catch those fish. And that's why we're looking for shade. So any kind of docks that you have room to really cast underneath or even flip, a lot of people don't understand, you can work this just like a jig. You flip underneath that dock and let that bait sink and then do what we talked about, that hopping that bait off the bottom. You're really gonna be able to trigger these fish that are just trying to relax and this thing's really just jumping in their face, they're gonna nip at it.
These fish are fired up. Sure, you wanna see a big clear lake bass, baby? Holy cow. That's a big one. Oh, he comes again. You ready for this?
Nice parabolic bait.
A monster on the lipless.
Something to note. If you guys are fishing at lakes where you've got a lot of vegetation, you just, Travis, I've got grass underneath these docks, it's not gonna work. You can do more of a sweeping motion. So you don't let this bait sink all the way to the bottom. What you can do is you can cast under or along these docks. And what you can do is you can sweep that rod, reel up the slack, sweep that rod. So you're never letting that bait get all the way to the bottom. What's happening is you're sweeping it, you're making that erratic motion, that rattles are going, that's getting those fish kind of fired up, and then the bait is sinking down. So they kind of go, oh, it doesn't look like it's just gonna go by, and that can aggravate them as well, and they'll go nip at it. So something to think about if you've got a little bit of grass and stuff like that. All right, guys, if you've seen any of my other videos, you will realize that I love lipless crankbaits, basically because of the pure versatility of them. You can cast and just wind them in, you can hop them, sweep them. There's an endless amount of ways to throw this, so there's so many different situations that you can catch fish in. But a lot of people don't realize this little technique of just pitching under the docks in the shade and really just trying to get a pissed off bass. And so hopefully this is a new technique that you guys can go out and have some success. When other people are at home just trying to hide from the heat, you can at least be going out and having some fun. And by using a bait like this Sebile Vibe Machine, you really know that bait is running true. If you look at this underwater footage, you can see that that bait is really going, it's hopping up straight and then it's coming down straight. And that's really crucial when you're trying to do something underneath that dock and you're really trying to imagine what it's doing, that you know that it's doing the right thing for you. All right, guys, I'm Travis with Lucky Tackle Box. If you enjoyed the video, throw us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet. And for any more information on the gear or the tackle that we used in this video, check the description box below for some links. Oh, I don't know what that was. Shit. There we go. You like that? That's the lipless, dude. Oh, baby.